Greetings, it's Margaret Maloney, your friendly neighborhood project management instructor, and I just wanted to expand upon the topic of strategic reserve time today. And when I'm talking about strategic reserve time, I'm using the definition and some examples from The Juggler's Guide to Managing Multiple Projects by Michael Dobson. Let's start off first with what is strategic reserve time? The short way to answer that question is to say, this is the time that you or your team has to really work on projects. And what does that really mean? It means that many people have other work that they do. You probably do, and your team members do as well. And there's work that's done on a regular basis. You might call it maintenance, you might call it operations, or your day-to-day work that must be completed and is not part of the project, but certainly takes part of your work day and your work week. And there's also extra special things that are going to come your way. That extra special presentation that you're asked to give to management for a project that might come down in the future, or that phone call to help someone who's now maintaining something that you turned over a year ago, or the extra special data collection that the person you work for asks you to do. So all of these things need to be taken into consideration. And then after we've done that, the time that's left over, that's our strategic reserve time. That's the time we have left to work on projects. So what? Well, it's a big so what, because you notice that what I said was strategic reserve time is the time you have left to work on projects, and you're a project manager, and you have team members assigned to your projects. You want to make sure that your team members are assigned accurately and appropriately. And to be honest, this is an area where some of us, maybe not you and maybe not at your organization, but some of us, this is where we frequently, pardon the expression, shoot ourselves in the foot. And the reason we do is because we find out that we have a team member assigned to us. That's wonderful. And we start to put them into our project schedule. Now, a lot of times your scheduling software will default to allocating somebody 100%. Well, what if that's not true? Right away, I'm telling a lie in my schedule. I'm not purposefully being deceitful, but if I place somebody into my schedule and say they are available 100%, well, it's going to show that their work completes a lot earlier than it really will. Okay, but you're smarter than that. So you know to ask a functional manager or a resource manager. And when I say functional manager, I mean someone who's not a project manager. And I'm using that term interchangeably with resource manager, as in the person who manages the people who are lent to us on our projects. That right there assumes that we're working in a matrix type organization, which may or may not be true, but for my discussion here we are. So I'm smarter. I'm not going to just enter them in and let it default to 100%. I'm going to ask the resource manager, how much of this person's time do I get? And so let's say they say 50%. Then I'm going to allocate that person at 50%. Well, that's better. But what if we haven't stopped to figure out what 50% means? Is that 50% of a 40-hour week? Which some of you are laughing now because so many of you work so much more than that, but we'll pretend today that we work a 40-hour week. So is it 50% of a 40-hour week, which is 20 hours? Or is it 50% of their strategic reserve time, which is the time that's left over after all their other assignments? Plus, what about other projects that they're allocated to? So you see the difference? It could be 50% of a 40-hour week, which is 20 hours, but they could have maybe only strategic reserve time of 10 hours, in which case 50% of that is 5 hours. That means you get this person allocated to your team for 5 hours a week. That makes a huge difference when you're coming out with your schedule and you're making commitments. And that's why it's a big so what, because you really do care. You really want to know that this has been taken care of. Well, how do we know? So how do we know this about ourselves or about a team member? Well, first, that means we have some good time tracking, that we are paying attention to how our time is being spent, that we keep history. So not just that I kept time tracking this week, but that I can look back and historically see how I spend my time on any given week, on any given month. And then, of course, that I use that historic data. And now, let's say I have 3 months of historic data. I could pull all of that, and I could, if I had accurate headings, I could see how much of my time goes to day-to-day maintenance, how much of my time goes to maybe customer service or production fixes or fighting fires, whatever you want to call it, how much of my time goes to special requests that are not project related, and then finally, how much of my time really went to projects. And now, if I can look at that and use that historic data and pay attention to where my time has gone and be honest about the fact that this trend is likely to hold unless we do something to change it, now I understand what my strategic reserve time really is, and now I understand how to really allocate myself. And that's where we're going to leave our strategic reserve time conversation for today. But we're going to have a part 2, because you know what's next is, let's apply this to our team so that we don't have resource allocation problems and we don't shoot ourselves in the foot before our project ever begins. Bye for now.